Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 2 Point Perspective. It's Elizabeth, and today we're continuing to talk about something we touched on a little bit last week, the idea of detours. Because detours happen in riding. Sometimes it's the horse, sometimes it's us, and sometimes it's just life. And it can change more than just the plan. Whether it's an illness, a surgery, an injury, burnout, a fall, a horse setback, or simply life change in the plan, the question riders quietly live with is, what if I can't come back the same, or even worse, what if I can't come back at all? And that's not theoretical for us right now. Reynolds is in surgery recovery mode this week, and she's doing great. She's strong and she's surrounded by love, but it's a reminder that life can interrupt your rhythm at any moment, even when you're doing everything right. So today's episode is about the part we don't talk about enough. When you hit a detour, whether it's physically or emotionally, why does it change the way you ride, and why it isn't always something you can just fix alone by deciding to be brave? And a quick update. Last week I said we'd be sharing a college rider's concussion story. That conversation is still coming, but the timing is shifted. So today I'm joined by Samantha Shanks-Husband from Prepare to Win to talk about what happens when riding and life take a detour. Riding is a sport where your nervous system learns really fast. After a detour, an injury, an illness, a surgery, a scare, or a fall, your brain starts scanning for danger. It looks for danger in every chip, every spook, every moment you feel anything out of position, every distance that doesn't show up, and riders are so good at hiding it. We keep showing up, we keep going to the barn, we keep going into the ring, and we say, I'm fine, but your body tells the truth. Anxiety in the saddle doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like you're bracing, freezing, riding defensively, holding your breath. That's really the worst. Or riding like you're preparing for an impact. And the tough part is you can still be riding while silently not trusting any of it. I had a horse a couple of years ago that created a very specific kind of fear pattern in me. If you lost your rhythm to the jump, you missed. But if you missed, he would still jump, and he jumped, whether it was long, short, didn't make any difference because he was incredibly athletic. And when he jumped really hard, and it knocked you loose. And then, I don't know how this happened, but on the other side, maybe because you lost your leg, but he would stop. So it wasn't just a mistake. You were suddenly a flying object, and then stuck trying to recover your balance at the worst possible moment. So needless to say, you landed on the ground pretty often. And it happened enough that my body stopped trusting the process. And what I didn't realize at the time was that your body adapts to try to protect you. So I couldn't sit up straight. I was all hunched over. I rode in fetal position, and I constantly looked down. It was like I needed to see that what was coming, like the ground was coming soon. And that's what a detour can look like in riding. It's not drama. It's not weakness. It's just protection patterns. And the hard part is you can't always think your way out of it. I mean, I knew what I was doing wrong. And that's why I needed to bring in someone who's helped so many riders, including me, climb out of that spiral. Samantha Shanks-Husband from Prepare to Win works with riders on confidence, performance mindset, and anxiety, especially after falls, injuries, and setbacks. Sam is a trusted resource, a great friend, and she's been the person I leaned on when my riding anxiety was real and physically affecting the way I rode. Sam, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to 2-Point Perspective.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Okay, first question. What is actually happening in a rider's brain and nervous system after a detour? Whether it's an injury, an illness, surgery, or a scare. Why does anxiety show up even when we're physically okay, and why does it stick?
Well, what most people don't realise, Elizabeth, is that anxiety after a scare, and as you've said, it doesn't have to be a fall or a bad experience. It can be a bereavement, divorce, any life change that affects how safe the brain feels in the world. It's not a confidence issue. It's a nervous system response. When something frightening happens, whether it's illness, surgery, or something else, your brain learns very quickly, not in the logical thinking part, but in the automatic survival system. So the system isn't asking, can I still do this? It's asking, how do I make sure this never happens again? So it stays on alert, it scans for danger, and it creates protective patterns in the body. And in riding, that might look like bracing, holding your breath, riding defensively, feeling tense before you even get on, or it could just show up as wanting to avoid doing certain things. And this all happens outside your conscious awareness and is beyond your conscious control. And this is why it sticks, because time, logic, reassurance, or telling yourself to be brave don't update that system. So you can rationally know you're safe and still feel anxious because your lower brain, the part wired for survival, hasn't learned it yet. And this matters because the lower brain can dull or even shut down the rational thinking part of the brain. And the brain evolved this way for our protection. And that was great hundreds of years ago when we were dodging predators. But when it's firing off inappropriately and stealing the enjoyment from our riding, it's just not serving us at all. And this is why nerves, anxiety, and fear can be so confusing, because they don't live in logic. They live in that lower part of the brain, wired for survival. And this is why, even if you know you have the skill and ability to do something, you know your horse is capable, you can still experience anxiety, nerves, and fear. And the important thing I want people to hear is this: no matter how anxious or nervous you are, we can retrain and rewire your brain so you can become a calmer, more confident rider and bring the enjoyment back to riding, even if you've had a bad fall or some other life event that has put your brain into constant survival mode.
So it's not weakness, it's protection? What's the difference between normal nerves and fear that's become a pattern?
So you're absolutely right. It is protection, not weakness. And many riders don't even realise they're bracing until someone points it out, because it can become automatic. Your brain genuinely believes it's keeping you safe. Of course, it's actually doing the opposite, because your horse is constantly reading your limbic system. And when your fight or flight response is activated, that immediately activates theirs too. And when we're anxious and tense, it makes riding with feel, presence, and balance so difficult. So the safest way to ride is being calm, confident, and capable, and giving your horse that calm, clear leadership. And when our brains are in survival mode, it just makes doing that impossible. And that's why it's essential to fix it. And the difference between nerves and your brain being stuck in survival mode is really, if we feel a bit nervous, as soon as we get evidence that we're actually safe, then we calm down. But when our brain is stuck in survival mode, no matter how much evidence it has that you're safe, you still stay in that anxious, nervous, fearful mode.
Let's talk about the emotional layer, because riders feel shame about fear. What do you say to the rider who's thinking, I should be over this. I used to be brave. What's wrong with me?
I mean, this is such a painful part of anxiety, and it's where people get really stuck because now they're not just afraid, they're judging themselves for being afraid. And also, if they're surrounded by people who've never experienced anxiety, it can be really confusing for those people as well. Like, why is this happening? It doesn't make any sense. So I always say feeling fearful, anxious or nervous, or getting caught in those endless what ifs or worst case scenarios is not a character flaw. It isn't a choice, and it absolutely isn't your fault. It's simply your brain doing what it evolved to do, and ultimately that's to protect you. And it does this by making predictions based on past experiences, things that have happened to you, things you've seen happen to others, or even stories you've absorbed over time, something you've just heard about. Instead of you being able to respond calmly to what's actually happening in reality, your brain is responding to what it's predicting, and this is what we need to change. And the great news is, this is absolutely something you can change. You don't need to be braver, you need a calmer brain.
Is confidence something you rebuild or find again?
So confidence is something we build. And when we're separating fear from identity, we want to recognise fear is not who you are. Fear is a response your nervous system learned under pressure. So confidence isn't something we can wait for. It's not something that's going to magically show up at some future point. And through all my work with riders, I found that there are 4 key elements that need to be addressed for confidence to genuinely return. They're 4 pieces of the same puzzle. Because genuine confidence isn't one thing, and it doesn't come from one place. To develop genuine inner confidence, the kind that's there for you when you really need it, we need to calm your lower brain, the part that's wired for survival. We need to train your rational thinking mind to think in more helpful ways. And this isn't about positive thinking. It's about training your brain to think properly about things and in a helpful way. And we want to train your brain to think in that way automatically. Then we need to change your relationship with yourself by changing your self-talk, updating any unhelpful beliefs you have. And these could be about yourself, other people, or the world around you. And finally, we need to develop focus, awareness, and attention. We need to train your brain to deliberately focus your attention where it will be most helpful and beneficial, rather than being distracted by past experiences, what ifs, worst case scenarios, people watching you, or past mistakes, for example. And if any one of these elements is missing, then confidence can be fragile. But when we cover all these aspects, confidence becomes something you can rely on, not something you just hope shows up when you need it. And of course, none of these elements is separate, and they all work together to create genuine inner confidence.
Okay, if someone listening has anxiety right now, this week, what's the one tool they can use immediately when fear hits them in the saddle?
So the quickest way to calm our nervous system and our lower brain is with our breathing. And breathing's so simple, it's often overlooked. And also, many anxious people have tried breathing exercises and found they just didn't really work for them. But that's usually because when we're anxious or nervous, we tend to breathe through our mouths and into our chest. And for our breathing to calm our nervous system, we need to make sure that we're breathing in and out through our noses and breathing down into our belly. And one of my favourite breathing techniques is box breathing. It's used to reduce stress and anxiety, improve focus and emotional regulation, and supports physical performance. And the exercise, it's really simple, but it's powerful because it helps to calm your nervous system and reset your body during stress. So when fear hits, breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4. And you repeat. Now, when I say a 4 count, Elizabeth, I mean 4 seconds. So 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. If you do box breathing, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That won't settle your nervous system. So breathing in for a count of 4, holding for a count of 4, breathing out for a count of 4, holding for a count of 4, and repeating. And if riders practice this regularly when they're not feeling anxious, then they can use it in high pressure moments and they'll start to feel more in control of both their physical and mental responses. I had a rider recently, she said that she'd gone out for a hack on her horse. She was going to a place they'd never been before and they were going through a village. There was lots of things going on and she just used her box breathing the whole time. She stayed calm, her horse stayed calm. So it works beautifully. So make sure you're breathing in and out through your nose and down into your belly. That's really important for getting the best out of this exercise.
Can you give an example of the internal script you'd want riders to use?
I really want riders to support and encourage themselves. So saying to yourself things like, I trust myself, I trust my horse, I trust our training. We've got this. We can do this. And I encourage riders to train their minds to focus on what they want their horses to do and use that as your inner commentary. So, for example, it was only the 3rd time I'd ever ridden my horse on my own on the Quantox, and she's an Andalusian, Cross Lusitano, and she elevates very easily. And the hunt came cantering up behind us. And my inner commentary in that moment was, you're with me, we're going over here, and that's nothing to do with us. My mind was completely focused on what I wanted my horse to do, not on fears of what might happen. And that's because I practice what I preach, and I've trained my brain to think in helpful ways. And anyone can do that. So even though my horse was shaking because she was having a big reaction to all this energy flying up behind us and cantering past us, she listened to me and she stayed with me. And things would have been very different if my brain had panicked. So use that internal dialogue to support yourself, to encourage yourself, and to focus on what you want your horse to do.
How do you set comeback goals that don't backfire?
Well, firstly, don't expect to pick up where you left off. That's really important. Start smaller and gradually work towards the level you want to reach. Small, bite-sized steps where you gradually stretch your comfort zone. And it's really important not to overface yourself, because pushing through and riding when you feel tense or nervous doesn't build confidence, because this isn't the type of experience that tells your brain, actually, we're okay. So something riders can do to really support themselves, your brain often can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So we can utilise this. So riders can use mental rehearsal to prepare so that as far as their brain's concerned, you've already achieved what you're setting out to do many times. And so by the time you come to do it in reality, your brain is happy to do it. And ultimately, the best way to achieve your goals is to invest as much effort in training your mind as you do your body and your horse. We need to develop psychological confidence. And when you get your mind working for you instead of against you, goals become achievable and reaching them becomes more enjoyable.
Sam, before we wrap, if this resonates with someone listening, what does it look like to work with you? Who should reach out and where can they find Prepare to Win?
So anxiety and confidence, it's a huge topic and we've only touched the surface today. So if this has resonated with you, do get in touch. You can email me at sam@preparetowin.co.uk or book a free call with me via my website, preparetowin.co.uk. I work with riders at all levels, from beginners to professionals competing internationally, and I work with riders at every point on the confidence spectrum. So whether you feel too anxious to even lead your horse in from the field, or you want to feel more confident hacking out on your own, even if you're having full-blown panic attacks, or you're competing at the highest level and just want to be able to perform at your potential in those high-demand environments, get in touch, as I will be able to help. My work focuses on helping riders understand what's happening in their nervous system and then retraining it, so confidence can return naturally rather than being forced. Everything I do is practical, supportive and evidence-based because riders need tools that actually work in the saddle.
If you take nothing else from today, take this. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is information. If your body is bracing, freezing, or preparing for impact, it's not because you're broken. It's because you learned something the hard way, and the comeback isn't always about being tougher. Sometimes it's about being supported, having tools, having language for what's happening, and having someone help you rebuild your trust in layers instead of forcing yourself through it alone. A huge thank you to Samantha Shanks-Husband of Prepare to Win for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today, Elizabeth. I'm so excited that you're talking about this. I think so many riders have almost come to accept feeling nervous or anxious as just part of riding, and it really doesn't have to be this way. And I just want everybody to know that you don't have to suffer. We can change this. We can rewire your brain for calm confidence so you can really enjoy your riding and enjoy your horse, and every rider deserves that.
If you're in a detour right now where you're showing up but your body is telling a different story, I'm going to link Sam and Prepare to Win in the show notes, because you don't have to white knuckle your way through this sport alone. Detours are part of the sport and, frankly, part of life. We're thinking of Reynolds this week as she recovers, and we'll see you next Thursday. And as always, let's ride.